How's everybody doing tonight? Look like it's just me in the box, but we gonna make it work. Just gonna do kind of a risk assessment. You see right there, data warehousing, ETL, extraction, transform, and load. Just gonna kind of walk through AWS Glue right there. A couple people asked me some questions about it from an assessment standpoint, so just thought I would just kind of walk through it and look at some AWS features to help you do that. Then Thursday on the Lunch and Learn, we're going to dig down a little deeper into that. So just kind of want to kick that off once again. Hopefully everybody's having a great week. It's been a long week for me already. I got to get it together, but always. So let's get to it. Let's get started. You know how we do it. If you got any questions, cybersecurity technology, just drop them in the box. Give me a one in the chat. I don't think anybody's here yet. Just give me a one in the chat. Let me check my resources. Okay, we're doing good. Doing well. Let's go ahead and get started. Once again, that's the standard data engineering, data warehouse, data lake. You see it right there at the top. Data lake kind of architecture. So once again, we're just going to kind of walk through and look at Glue from an assessment standpoint. I might do some more videos on doing Glue from once again from a NIST 800-53 FedRAMP standpoint. Let's see, we got shout out to GMR, shout out to Regime for giving me the one in the chat. I appreciate you. So we're just going to talk about assessment for data warehousing, data engineering, just kind of in the middle of that data glue. Some people ask me some questions. Was that appropriate to use that to do NIST work? So that's kind of what we're going to step through. And two, I think is going to lead me into my Thursday lunch and learn, talking about risk assessment, threat assessments, kind of dig into that a little more for my lunch and learn Thursday. I hope. Once again, drop your questions or your questions, technology or cybersecurity in the box. Long story short, I should do data warehousing and data engineering when I was consulting at DoD. So I kind of really enjoy that type of work. So once again, let's check on that risk assessment for data lake. Once again, data engineering, data lake, data warehouse, kind of walking through that. This is the piece right here that we're going to kind of drill into. And part of a risk assessment, usually, once again, we select a vendor. What we're talking about now is the second phase, performance, security, and risk assessment, then contract negotiations and renew. So if this was somebody giving us software that's running on Glue, what would they look like? Really, this slide is really for for my Thursday presentation when we dig down more into, once again, assessment, contracts, renew for risk assessment when you actually procure software. So, and right here, bad software picks cost us 2.41 trillion. Cybersecurity, data breaches, operational failures, legacy, unsuccessful development projects. So that's why you do risk assessment on software, risk assessment on what projects you're doing. Once again, when I worked at a big company, we did a risk assessment from vendor, procurement. I did the compliance piece. Then there's the security architectures, right? Your standard questions. So big companies, it takes a while to get that to go through. If you see at the bottom, risk assessment expedited by 6 to 8 weeks. Most small companies I know, they do their risk assessment in like a couple of days. But when you're a big company, right, those are the things you're doing. Once again, I think we're going to dig into that a little more Thursday. So Just want to touch base on those and what that would look like. That is out of place, but we'll get to it. So, from a scope standpoint, we're going to really just talk about data lake. AWS Glue is kind of the product, and it actually reads files from an S3 bucket, puts it into a Redshift or RDS database, and people usually query it with Athena. But somebody asked me some questions once again about the AWS Glue part, crawlers, workflow features of it. So that's kind of what we're drilling into today. Let me see if anybody got any questions. Oh, who was like, God, hey, y'all, what's going on? Glad you could join me. Uh-oh. Whenever I tune in to PBR, I get sleepy. I'm sure I'm with you on that. I might bump it up a little bit myself. I'll be running on fumes by the time I do. GMR, when I do this presentation, I'm heading right to bed. So I'm with you on that. I might try to bump it up to 7. So I'm with you on that. We might go from late night with PBO to earlier with PBO, but I'm with you on that. I'm getting up there too. So I feel you on that. So let's keep rolling. Once again, that's kind of the scope of work. Standard NIST documentation provides a catalog of security and privacy controls for United States federal information systems. For people who don't know, NIST stands for National Institute of Standards and Technology. It's a non-regulatory agency of the United States Department of Commerce. I always miss that Department of Commerce. And usually it's for FISMA, which came out in 2014. Federal Information Security Modernization Act of 2014, that's FISMA. So the government basically was spending money to bring their systems up to par. And when that Modernization Act was legislation, and for that legislation, they told people to use NIST 800-53, right? But I think Chris said that 53 is kind of getting a little long in the tooth. So people going to CMC 171, a little ISO, but once again, I'm a huge proponent of NIST 800-53. And most people know that about me. So if anything, people say anything disparaging about NIST, I usually jump on the panel. But so now that's it. So let's keep rolling. Like I said, it's like GMR said, it's not many slides, so we're gonna just kind of flow through it. These are the 20 security functions of NIST 800-53. I'm not going to read them. You see them there. That's why I like NIST 800-53. It's pretty broad. And when you dig down into the subfamilies and the enhanced controls, you get about 1,000 controls, right? So that's why I like it. Oversight, overreach. What you need, it's in there. So then you pair that with some of the hardening, CIS, my favorite, the STIGs, schisms for the IRS. There's a ton of hardening documents. I think it, once again, gives you great security. It's a heavy lift, though. Definitely a heavy lift. Just looking at the subfamilies if you want to drill down more. And I got a ton of videos drilling down in this 800-53. So up here, you're at AU, auditing accountability, and if you go down there, there's multiple subcontrols. This is the subcontrol AU4. It talks about base controls. Then you see their control enhancements. And once again, I've done a ton of NIST 800-53 videos. I don't think I've done one this year, though, for NIST R5. So we probably put one in the queue. So a lot of times when you do AWS has a spreadsheet with the compliance programs for the software you're thinking about using, right? So if you're developing software or you're a software company, you're going to use an S3 bucket, EKS, Kubernetes, Dockers, whatever you want to use on there, EC2s, you can come in here and say what compliance you're picking. Then they tell you if that particular service is under the compliance you're looking for. Right here, FedRAMP is basically NIST 800-53 in the cloud. If you look down here, it tells you it was last updated July 23rd, 2025. And right above there, Services go through FedRAMP assessment and authorization. We'll have the following status. Third-party assessment organization, 3PL. The service is currently undergoing an assessment by a third-party assessor. Under review, this service is currently undergoing review by the FedRAMP board, which means they have the big companies, the big dogs that are certified to do that type of work, drill into the software to make sure it can once again do that type of work. NIST, FedRAMP, CMC. We'll look at some of those, and I think I'm gonna bring the page up. But so what I do, if you look here on the service provided, and we'll actually go to that page. Actually, I think I have it up. Is you go to the particular service and they tell you if it's approved to do FedRAMP type of work. FedRAMP in AWS is the East and West regions and the GovCloud region. So if you're in Chicago, that's not really certified to do FedRAMP work. Those data centers haven't been certified by 3PL. So once again, we usually look up those services. And I think I'm great. Bring up that page while we're talking. We're talking about assessments. Shout out to my man Calvin for joining me. So let's go to that page. And a lot of times people talk to me about risk assessment. What does that actually look like? Some of it looks like this. So we're in a page. Let me make sure that page is showing. Yep. My man Ripley's off of there. Make the page a little smaller. So first, kind of one of the first things I do, people ask me what I do. A lot of times I train people on third-party assessment. So part of that is saying, hey, let's go to AWS Services by Compliance Program. Once again, we're on the FedRAMP page. Let's go back to the, of course, that's not the page I wanted. Let's see if we can go back. Where is the, wasn't it? It's the FedRAMP. Where is, of course, when you do it live, it's always, okay, here it is. So if you go to the first page, to the left, these are all the big certifications, compliances that AWS has. They have a lot more, but so if you look over here, you see HIPAA, High Trust CSF. I think that's Chris's new big thing. DOD, SRG, FedRAMP, FINMA is big. STAR is pretty big. PCI, shout out to my man Jaime. The PCI, SOC, this is a big certification. Shout out to my man David. But you know, FedRAMP is really NIST 800-53 in the cloud. So we click on that. Then once again, here's all the programs. So let's go find Glue. This is what we're talking about right now, the ETL. Let's make sure, what are we searching for? We're seeing if it's certified to do NIST and FedRAMP type work. So you see it right there, AWS Glue. So it's the first part of my assessment is Glue's okay to do FedRAMP type work, right? But remember, it's shared responsibility. AWS has Glue capable of doing that work, but how do we need to configure it internally, right? AWS gives you the services and components. You're responsible for configuring them. So that's pretty small. Let me make that a little bigger. On T2, maybe that's why I had it big. So there you see it right there, Glue. And if we looked, it was connected to a S3 bucket once we went back. So S3, simple storage. So I try to say, okay, everything we do in an ETL are those services and components set up to do FedRAMP work. We were connecting it to simple storage in S3. We were using the SQS. We were using SNS. A lot of times we put stuff in a queue. So to queue up, then we can use Lambda to do that work. A lot of times we write it to an S3 storage, object storage. Once again, that's stated. A lot of times we write it to a database. So you see the databases there. All the RDSs are certified to do FedRAMP work. RDS DB2, MariaDB, MySQL, Oracle, Postgres. SQL Server, Redshift is real big, especially in the ETL. So once again, those components that we were using for that particular project are certified to do that work. Right. So we see the checkbox, and the checkbox rolls up to, is it Gov or FedRAMP? FedRAMP East and West. You can do it in the Gov Cloud, or if it was confirmed by the JAB. Once again, most of their products are certified. You just really have to pick the right region. So to API Gateway. So once again, as part of an assessment, has that particular service been assessed or certified by the 3PAO, which we were looking at previously, to do that type of work? Right. Then I usually take a screenshot of this page and just kind of put that in a Word document and file it away. Because if everybody comes back, the big thing too is you need to show your work. So if some of my boss said, well, how did you pick this? Was it approved? I'd be like, dude, AWS certified it to do this type of work. Here's the certification from AWS's website. Right. So once again, it's shared responsibility though. The service is approved, but what else do you need to do to configure it? Right? So that's kind of what we're going to dig into. Once again, if you got any questions, just drop them in the chat. Technology or cybersecurity, and we get to it. Let's see. Let me get back to the slideshow. So that was me a screenshot, but that's, like I said, high level. And once again, most of their services are set up to do FedRAMP, NIST, CMC type work. That's one reason I like AWS. They're about that life, right? What life is that? Getting that federal and state money, right? Makes it easier. Then there's a tool out there called AWS Config. It actually scans your products once again to make sure they're configured properly. The weird thing is glue and ETL was nowhere on there, right? So that got me thinking. What I've found out, which I'm not very happy with, they believe AWS is doing most of the heavy lifting, so they didn't want to actually put it in conformance pack to scan for those settings. But let's look through Glue what I think it needs to configure to be, once again, to be approved to do that type of work. Once again, if you look at the documentation, AWS config stands for configuration. Developer guide, this is what I give to developers from GRC and say, these are the requirements you need to set for the services you picked. So if you see on the slide, it talks about IAM for IAM password. Basically, that's coming out the NIST 863, NIST 863, and the AWS Foundation Security for Password Strength, right? List. So if you look on there, best practices value 24. That's password history. The length is 14. Password age. They want you to change your password every 3 months. That's a big discussion as should you make people, because people changing their password every 3 months, they start writing them down, especially older people. But that's a different discussion for a different time. What this does is says, once again, for your configurations settings for this particular product, even if you're using Glue, you got to log in. So what is your IAM password to log into Glue? And this is the standard coming from this special publication 863. And once again, even though Glue didn't have any settings, I went into ChatGPT, I went into Grok, and I asked them what should be the settings for Glue if I was doing this 800-53 FedRAMP. And these are the things it says where the settings needed to configure it, like we talked about. They give you Glue. AWS gives you Glue services. Once again, what do you need to configure it to secure it? Once again, it's shared responsibility. So we're going to go through that real quick. Let me see if there's any questions. I'm going back. Shout out to my man, Todd. Thanks for joining me. We about that life. I need to get that on another shirt. We about that life right on here. Facts. So I'll make that a little bigger. So once again, we're talking about risk assessments. I used to do a lot of these. I just do a piece of them now. A lot of times when I come into small firms, they ask me to what do we need to do for a risk assessment. And right, like we said, right here, there's levels to this. Right, we could talk about compliance. These are the check boxes, right? You got your password set, right? You could be compliant and not secure, and be secure and not compliant, right? So from a compliance standpoint, these are the check box. And from a security standpoint, what do you need to do to actually lock it down and make sure we don't get hacked? And put those together, what do we need to do to pass the third-party assessment so we can get our SOC 1, 2, we get our HIPAA high trust when people come on, what they're going to look for, right? So I try to split those up and put those together as best of breed, right? Once again, you could be compliant and not secure. You could be secure and not compliant. We want to put those together, right, and make them work together. So let me make this a little bigger. Maybe I won't. So let's kind of flow through them real quick. So once again, what do you need to configure in Glue to make sure Glue can pass a NIST 853 or FedRAMP, or really IRS? You know, all those checks are really under NIST, right? To make sure you could pass a federal assessment or federal, once again, check from a 3PAO. So from the access control, that's usually your password. So what do you need? IAM roles with least privilege limit the access of the Glue job crawler and data catalogs. Those are different things inside Glue. Once again, who can use what? Only let them do what they need to do their job. Once again, you want to limit the people's access into Glue jobs, crawlers, and data catalogs, because those usually have passwords to connect to databases, passwords to get to S3 buckets, right? S3 buckets, you know, I have social security numbers, legal documents, medical records are usually stored on there. So who can get there? You can have the documents on there. You can have Glue go out there, read the documents, put them in the database, then lock down the database per their job role, right? So if I'm billing, I shouldn't need to see people's billing records, right? I mean, people medical records. I need to see that the work was done, but I shouldn't see diagnosis or anything. Or if I'm some doctor, right, I get to see the whole medical records in there, right? So there's one record, you just show them what data elements they can see on that record. And that's where your access control comes in. The other one, AC19, remote access for mobile devices. A lot of times I just block mobile devices, right? So let's separate mobile devices and phones from laptops. Mobile devices for me are hard to put controls on, like GPOs, where your corporate laptop is a little easier. So once again, we just talking about what do we need to secure and Glue to make it NIST or FedRAMP compliant, or make sure you and your company can pass a FedRAMP audit. We're just gonna kind of flow through these, right? Audit and accountabilities. You want to get your audit events and reviews. My favorite one, encryption in transit and at rest, right? We're going to use our AWS KMS keys for your S3 data, your bookmarks, and your data catalog. We want to make sure those are encrypted. If somebody tries to get them off a disk or try to read them and they don't have access to the keys, right, they wouldn't be able to read them. Boundary protection and system partitioning. Use your VPC, which is your private networking security groups. Who can get to what, and make sure if you're coming from the internet, right, you still got to go through your tenant to get your packets validated, get your packet scanned, to make sure we can put MFA on their particular connections. Right? Configuration management. Use Glue version in AWS config to track and monitor changes. Contingency planning. Make sure you have system backups for your Redshift, your DynamoDB, got your S3 versioning on. Incident response, how will you handle if you got hacked? Got to monitor your job logs and your metrics. Integrate your security hub and guard duty for alerting. Identification and authentication. Use your IAM, once again, your MFA for developers. Jobs should use scope roles, rotate credentials, and secret managers. Fly remediation. Keep Glue jobs using patch libraries and use code package for integrity checks. Because part of the glue is you can do custom Python, custom PySpark. So you want to control that code, who puts the code in there, who can run the code, and who can validate it, right? And who can release that code in production, release management, right? But once again, that's big boy security, big boy GRC. And a lot of times, smaller companies are trying to grow into that. Shout out to my man, Excel Pro in there. Oh, 100%. Oh, yeah, ISO's all over. Don't let me this. Oh, yeah, yeah. They do a ton of work in Europe, but it's not just Europe. ISO, yeah. AWS is all in ISO. Oh, let me see if I think is ISO on that page. Now that you mentioned, let's see. Is ISO on that page? What did I do with that page? It's ISO. That is funny. They did not mention ISO on this page. But yeah, ISO is definitely on there. At the end, I'll go pull up some ISO stuff. That is weird that ISO is not on this page. NIST is not on that page either. So it's kind of weird. But yeah, we'll go pull up some ISO stuff in a minute, Regine. We can make that up. But yeah, ISO's all over AWS. NIST does a ton of work in Europe. I know ISO's getting play in United States, but ISO was really first driven in Europe, and AWS want that European money too. Now they're all over ISO. We'll pick up a few things in ISO regime. I know we had a little slight discussion, but yeah, ISO's definitely in play. Don't let my I don't want to call it quite bigotry. That's too strong, but you know I'm this leaning, but no, ISO definitely in play. And we'll definitely touch on that at the end. We'll pull up some ISO stuff live. PLBL's not scared to go live. Optional artifacts you may need to collect. We talked about that. Glue job logs, IAM role definitions, KMS policies, AWS config rules, Glue job code archive for code reviews or ATO documentation. And we need to really start digging in that ATO documentation, which is authority to operate, which is really your SSP, which is your system security plan. And what does that look like for a company? That I did one. Well, let's say I reviewed one that was 1,600 pages, so it was crazy big. So, but let's go back up to the top. And once again, we were just talking about this from a glue standpoint, making sure it was in compliance, make sure it was in fair rent, making sure we remember we looked at the S3, we looked at Redshift, we looked at I think Lake Formation, and making sure AWS had those in a review. The 3PLs, third-party organizations, review those controls because theoretically, not theoretically, AWS has an SSP with all of these services in it. All right. A lot of times they won't go to you, they will go to the government for review. Right. It's shared responsibility. So AWS says, here's our documentation for our piece. Where's their configuration piece? And our configuration piece will really, when we start talking about here, these are the things we need to configure in Glue, in SS3, in IAM to make sure our services is secure to run. So let's jump back into the website real quick and let's look up a few. So that's 30 minutes. We got plenty. Oh, shout out to my man Cam. I didn't see him jump in the house. I got how you can cash a euro the same as a dollar. Facts. But you got to remember sometimes the United States don't want their data to leave the continental United States, or now they're calling it United States repositories. They don't want their data to leave the United States, but you are correct. I was curious about the same thing. Yeah, we're about to dig into it. Shout out to my man. I'll probably interview him soon. Big Cam. We worked at the state of Indiana together. I actually helped him get into the cybersecurity team. He was having a little difficulty getting in there. PBO kind of recommended him when he gets the big bad Jan Bond and make sure he got on the team. But shout out, one of the best decisions I ever made. He's killing it into the game now. So PBL's about to leave and Cam's getting started. So let's look at a little ISO though. Shout out to Regine. And Cam, we talking a little ISO. We're gonna do this on the fly, which is which is gonna be interesting, especially since I just lost my. Okay, let's see. I have a little difficulty with my mouse. We're gonna get it going here. Let me look up a few things real quick. Then we're gonna share the screen. So my mouse kind of disappeared, but we're gonna make it work. Where's ISO? So regime asking PBO on the live, putting pressure on him. What about ISO? So PBO knows. He think he knows. Let's find it real quick. Let's find some ISO stuff. ISO. Oh. Let's see. That's interesting. Let's see this best practices. Operational for NIST privacy 800 171. Graham Leach Briley. FedRAMP. PBO trying to find some ISO real quick. That's see, just this regime got me thinking now. What the hell? Let's look that up real quick. Of course, now my cursor wants to disappear, which is okay. Let's see, ISO 2701. Like I said, ISO is making a real big, I wouldn't say big comeback. I wouldn't say a comeback. It's, there it is. Let's share that real quick. What is going on with my cursor? Okay. I think my computer's boycotting. They don't even want to talk about ISO very much. So let's look right there. So this is actually on their website. So I know they're big. So let's make sure it's showing before I read it. Yep, there it is. So on the AWS, right there, compliance programs, they talk about the ISO 2701 from 2022, which is relatively new. So we're just going to skim through it. Security management standard, best practices, evaluate likeness, evaluate your system and risk. It has certifications for compliance. It's got the 2701 from 2022. 27117 for 2015, 2018. The certifications are performed once again by independent parties, usually the 3 PAOs. It's according with leading best practices. What regions is it supported in? Covered AWS regions that are in scope can be found here. Let's see what that is. I'll go to that. They got their certifications, but once again, Regine asked me about AWS in 2701. Once again, they all over it. Your services will not be impacted. Once again, continue to strive for the 2701. Talking about who's a certifying agent. They got the Dutch Accredited Council to help them do that for their big guys. Once again, their certification. Let's look at this certification. That's one reason I do like AWS is when you ask them for documentation, they will send you the real certification that they have. Let's make that a little bigger. I just want to touch on that. Regine asked about it. So this is their certification documentation. I wonder how good it was. We probably could find a newer one, but that was just on the website. So it's certified. It's DocuSign. That's their document date. It says 2025-05, March April 18th, so it just got recertified. It's weird because I thought 2013 was the year, but it was just certified. These are the data centers. Once again, kind of like NIST and FedRAMP. Only certain data centers you can do FedRAMP qualified work. That's East and West and Gov, right? So there's only three regions in their whole world that really can do federal work in. But remember, each one of those regions probably has probably 20 data centers in it, spread out around 100 miles apart. But once again, Regine asked about ISO. So these are the data center qualified to do ISO work. So we got Canada, Europe. Let me drop the link while I'm chit chatting. Once again, Regine asked me a question, so PBOs tries to answer live and in person. Okay, my man Min in showed up. I'm glad because I don't try to live. ISO is kind of one of my weaker things, but we can do a little bit. This is kind of light, but once again, I'll probably throw that link in the chat. But the data centers, let's see which ones they have in the United States. These are all over the world. That's the cool thing is look at all those data centers. Where's the ones in the U.S.? Oh, there we got some in there. Atlanta has some. Oh, these are local zones. A local zone is they have a data center, then inside residential areas, they have a local zone, meaning they want millisecond response time. So Atlanta is a big population. So really they have what they call local zones. I call them with telephone companies, they're clacks. So they actually have their equipment in some of those local telephone centers so they can come up and do that. Let's see who's joining me. Oh, Min Min, that's who I needed. What's going on, Min Min?
Hey, what's happening, Prof?
I need an ISO expert. And I was going.
Yeah. I actually replied to the chat as well.
Okay, I saw that. I'm great. Read it real quick. I was.
Yeah. So for the answer for Regine, ISO is more of like a business standard.
Mm-hmm.
It would work out, but in terms of processes and what, like how the company does risk assessment and what's their procedure for disposal, then HR security. So it depends on annexes. But if you look at like AWS data pipelines, you wouldn't be able to apply it. But yeah, like one of the annexes, which would be risk management, that would apply. But it comes up to the processes that the business have.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think because ISO is so hot in Europe. AWS says they can accommodate those like you said those business processes inside their data centers because they don't want you to be confused that we want your money too. That's how.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, of course. I thought I would just pop in. Uh, I see my man struggling a little bit, so help out.
Yeah, I always help out. Like I tell people, ISO is kind of not my thing as much, but I appreciate you always joining. But the weird thing is, Cam's got me. I probably start digging more on ISO because I see ISO being put in RFPs more in the
Oh yeah.
United States. So yeah, I think
I think it has become that baseline standard. So if any company wants to understand what their security posture is, they might as well go for ISO 27001. Makes it a little bit easier to understand where the gaps are. And
mhm.
there are probably like 15, 16 annexes that you have to work on, and it's quite easy. It's quite easy if you know what you're doing.
No, that's always the part about it. Like I said,
Yeah.
I think we got NIST figured out, but I think NIST was a heavy lift, so I think a lot of people were kind of switching to do ISO first before they
Yeah.
jump into NIST and FedRAMP to kind of build up to that. So I think that's kind of what I see a lot.
I learned this for you from you actually.
No,
So I already had the basis of ISO, and then when we started chatting and I had a look at your videos, I started learning this through that.
no, I
So
appreciate it.
yeah, I became a generalist because of you. So appreciate it.
Oh, No problem. I appreciate it. Glad my videos helped. So glad they help.
Of course, of course. I'm gonna leave you to it. I have a meeting, but have fun,
Okay.
Prof. We'll chat again.
All right. I'm sure I forgot you on the other side of the world. Have a good day, man.
You too,
Appreciate
buddy.
you, man.
Bye bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye bye. What's up, Jim R? What can I do for you?
Man, you give me some no-dos. I don't know what it is about this time of night. It's like when I was a little bit younger, it's like, yeah, it's like, hey, let's go to it, all the tech talk. Now it's like, hey, dinner,
I
time
know
for a
I'm
nap.
barely making I drank a pop I shouldn't be drinking. Man, I need a little caffeine to stay up. So
Know what you mean? Yeah, but then you have the caffeine. It's like 2 in the morning. You're wide awake, saying, "Why did I
no, not
drink that?"
anymore, man. I be barely making it. I'm so tired. So real quick. So at the top, we were talking about data pipeline, data warehouse, and data engineer. Somebody asked me a couple questions about glue and data lake. So that kind of wanted me to walk through can glue, can you do an assessment on glue? What would that look like? How do you configure it for federal work? So that's kind of what brought this particular YouTube video on, was kind of me going through an assessment of glue, really in that whole data engineering and data lake process. So what's new with you?
Oh, just keeping busy.
Yeah.
That's about it. You know, it's funny. I put in my title, Chief Can't Do Doer. One of my friends, I used to teach in the military at a joint services school. We used to do advanced networking and security and stuff, and we used to joke. You know, it's like, well, we can't do. You know, because the old saying is, those who can't do teach, right? And then he actually got a GRC certification. It's the GRCP. I know a little bit about that. They coined the term 20 years ago about GRC, all right? But we're on the government side, and you know, obviously dealing with NIST, RMF, etc. So that's our background. But he got that, and I made that joke to him, and then I realized it looks like I'm going to be teaching for an academy. We're going to be doing the ISC and ISACA certifications, like it's an immersive, doing the CGRC and the CISA and the CISSP and CCSP, like immersive boot camp type thing. So, and then I made the joke. It's like, you know, it's like, now I can't do, you know, now I got to teach, and now I can't even do that. So the joke was, now, yeah, once I can't do, then I have to teach GRC.
Yeah, I need to get back with Gerald and finish my course. I just been so tired. I gotta get some get some energy from somewhere. I was just kind of like super burnt out for a minute, so trying
I
to get
know that.
really back into. Well, shout out to Min Man. I'm glad he joined. So, like I said, I'm a little light, and like I said, I try to be transparent. Min Man does that in real life, right? He does ISO in real life. I don't. I think he said where he's from. Yeah, he said it online. He's in Australia. So shout out. I got viewers from around the world. So yeah, Min Man. Usually when we have our conversations, they're like about 4 a.m. in the morning. Usually when we talk.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I don't sleep well as old guys. So if I wake up, Mimi and sit me on. So we'll talk about something fair, RIP or NIST or ISO, and just kind of.
Yeah, maybe he can lead some stuff with ISO. It's like, for people like us, we kind of back into it, you know, from the NIST, and then we on the commercial side, it's like, hey, everyone's got to have a SOC too, right? So we go from there, and then it's like, oh, you know, some of those clients or agencies, we just kind of like back in because all our controls are mapped, so we figure it out and stumble through it. So it's not, believe me, it's not my first priority, just because I just don't live in that arena.
Yeah, and I know Regine's been dipping her toe in the ISO. I told her, I think that when I said, see Min Min, because Min Min, if I have ISO questions, I see Min Min or my, what's the other guy that came on study GRC? He did an excellent presentation on ISO. I'm blanking right now. So he actually got me leaning more towards digging a little more into uh ISO. Once again, I see it on RPs and RFIs when I work for when I used to work for a bigger company. So when I did their RFPs, request for proposals, and when software was coming in, a lot of their vendors were ISO
Well,
compliance.
well, it's funny. I've been looking at different products. Everyone's claim now is that we AI enable everything, and I
Oh,
look at it, and yeah, I said it's the same old garbage you had. You're just throwing a new spin on it. It's not going to
no.
save me any time or effort. So everybody's just jumping on that how it automates everything. So we'll see.
Ben Tech, don't let the the chart overwhelm you. The cool thing is the chart is overwhelming. Oh, that's it. You're right. Chris Hildago. Yeah, he's the man. Yeah, he got me in the eye. So I appreciate you. PBLB forget. Chris, I always remember, even in a big company, I'm familiar with all this, but in a real company, a lot of times different teams handle different pieces of that. Maybe your top guys will touch all of this, but using a big company, you got to have the ingest part. So you have a team to do that. The data lake part, the data analytics part, you have a team to do that. Machine learning, you have a team to do that. The quick site and business intelligence, Power BI, you have an analytics team to do that. Then the infrastructure guys that do file, IAMs, password, configuring all that. So FinTech. So yeah, in real life, that's probably 20 people handling all that at a bigger company, or probably a lot more when I worked at DoD. So I wouldn't worry about the chart being intimidating. What I try to do is when I first started is just kind of pick a piece of the chart that you want to become familiar with. Um, we used to say that at DoD, it's an elephant. You got to eat it one piece at a time. So once again, I've been doing this for 30 years, so I've kind of touched each one of those pieces. But now, those charts, I would just pick a piece and become accustomed to it and what piece you want to get. And a lot of times, too, as a GRC person, and I just kind of went through it. I just once again, I just looked at today just at the AWS glue part, kind of the middle part and what it was touching. Well, we would look at share responsibility, what AWS had and what we needed to do if we had to configure it, or a GRC. These are the requirements that team would have to configure to be able to use that from a federal perspective, a NIST perspective. And shout out to Regine. She asked me about ISO and how that would actually ducktail that in from that particular. And shout out to my man Min for joining me from around the world in Australia to help PBO out on that. PBO don't do a lot of ISO, so he was putting his take on it from that particular part. Once again, that's kind of on my list to get a little better at. But once again, that's probably number 10 on my list. Long story short, I've been getting my AWS certifications, become more comfortable in AWS because that's the cloud. From a GRC perspective, becoming comfortable with those different services from a compliance standpoint. And once again, what documentation we would have to get to from AWS and the development teams to make sure we're compliant to do federal work. So.
Hey PBO, hey, I just want to say it's funny because every time I say I got to get more into AWS and more into AWS, but I just don't live there, and then I get involved with obviously Azure because I'm there. But one thing I will say about AWS is in the books I've got here, it's they really stress their what's their term, their well architected framework or whatever, and they really
Oh
do.
yeah.
All of their pictures and how everything fits together conceptually is really slick, and I can't help but every time I'm here, it's like I would learn a lot more if I just got had time to crack open the AWS books, but I'll get there. Just like you'll get to AWS or Azure.
Oh yeah, 100%. What I did, it kind of forced me as I started getting their certs. So that kind of really forces me to dig in and study a little more. But no, that's it. Because I think I have 3, 4. I got 4 certs. So once again, they're high level certs. So I'm comfortable in there moving around. But I'm not saying I'm some great architect or anything. But once again, they do push their well architected and their pillars for architecture. And I try to dig into that and make sure I'm comfortable with those. So if you got any questions, put them in the chat.
Hey, PPO, do you plan on doing any study sessions on AWS architecture solutions or anything like that?
I haven't thought about it, but I might if you if you're asking me to. I haven't thought about it. I've done quite a few videos. I did one on landing zone, which is part of their well architecture, and their control tower is what they're pushing. Depending on what level control tower, it'll spin up their version of a well architecture. You pick these couple questions, and it says, but when I spun it up, it was daunting because they believe in multiple accounts. So you had to account for development, account for production, account for accounting. I was looking at like 10 accounts for a basic setup, and I was like, oh my god. They had a transit gateway so you can communicate between each one of them. I was like, okay. So so I'm finally getting comfortable with those because they really believe in multiple, which makes sense because it counts for them is kind of like encapsulating what you want to do. So, but no,
Do you have
go ahead.
do you have your certified solutions architect?
I do the associate one.
Does it?
I have the solution architect, solution developer, solution sysop, and I think by AWS security just expired. So I'm thinking about taking that again. So those are the three I currently have. I'm thinking about taking their associate data engineering. I've been debating about because they kind of stack on each other once you start taking them.
Gotcha.
So, like, if you take a solution architect, that's probably going to be 60% of development because the architecture is like, how do you split up a VPC? If you're developing, all your programs go on a VPC. So they ask you some of the same questions. Not at that level, but, you know, you got to be in a VPC. Then the sysop, if you're developing, the sysop is what type of disk you're going to do, what type of EBS you're going to do. There's like 6 types and speed. Is it in memory? So when you develop, you got to kind of pick which one's best for your program. And when you sysop, you're actually creating those for the developer to use. So that's kind of how they stack on top of each other. Shout out to my man Dwight, my privacy guy. If I needed a privacy question, he would be the guy. We actually did a great stream on privacy. We probably need to link up and do another one. Hopefully you're doing well, young man. He is younger than me. Young man, hopefully you're doing well. But no, Jim, those are especially my man Combo Courses. He's a NIST guy. So he's getting into the cloud, and so we were actually talking about which search. And I recommended for him, especially as a security guy, do the associate architect because architecture tells you what you, like you said, well architected and how they believe things should be set up. From a GRC perspective, that's what we need people doing. You need to be able to validate that setup. Once again, from a GRC perspective. Once again, if you got any questions, tech or chat, just throw them in the box. Definitely check out my man Dwight. He's been MIA for a minute. He was doing a few things on Simplest Cyber for a minute. I really enjoyed him and his Chris privacy. Streams were pretty good. That's one thing I've been definitely stepping my toe into. GDPR, CCPA, part of risk assessment is kind of the 10 questions from privacy. Did they opt in? They need to really be able to delete cookies now. Any website you need to accept the cookies, reject. Can you pick your own cookies? So those kind of like the 10 questions from a risk assessment from a privacy standpoint. I try to make sure I touch on because everybody's asking those type of questions. Then I think Colorado has their own kind of privacy, and New York, DFR, from a financial perspective, they were doing some privacy questions inside there. So that reminds me, I got to do a self-interview for somebody I'm late on. So I might do that tonight. But yeah, so those are the kind of things, once again, those things kind of stack on each other. And what those are was good. Surprise catch out. All good, all good. But yeah, that's we might touch on a little bit of that. I might interview my man before the billions. He's actually a data engineer in real life. And talk about from a GRC perspective what we would look for as he would build his data pipeline, setting that up for the AI people to get their data right in GRC. And we talked about that, but we're not going to debate that. Making sure the data's there, making sure it's secure. Shout out to Cam. Should we check if it's hallucinating, right? So I think Cam thinks it's a GRC thing. PBO, like, but once again, that was a great discussion. So once again, the pipeline, PBO is definitely on the pipeline. Make sure it's secure, make sure it's encrypted, making sure we're using the keys, making sure we control the keys, making sure the network never leaves the internet, making sure all the traffic goes through our tenant, goes through our VPC, actually send it to a net gateway so we can inspect the packets to make sure there's no malicious packets in there. Part of that is making sure it's using the MITRE TTP to make sure there's no bad guys in there doing some movement we don't know, right? Then we can send that on over to the AI people and the machine learning people to put it in. You see it right there. SageMaker is their AI, take their data, train their models on it, right? They actually have but they actually have a machine learning associate certificate. I'm debating if I'm gonna get that. I think I will have too many certificates. I think you could be over certificated. I know that's not a word. All right, you don't get too many certificates. For me, I get certificates. That just validates my base learning, right? That's not gonna make me no super duper. That actually just gets me, instead of my toe in the water, I'm just up to my knees, right? Still a lot more to learn. Still a lot more to do in real life, right? Kind of like Jim said, just because you teach it don't mean you can do it in real life. Just because you do it in real life too don't mean you can communicate to kids, right, and teach it. So there's a thing out there. When I said again, I thought he when I thought I hallucinating on me. Facts, man. Shout out to Cam. So, but yeah, so from a data engineering standpoint, once again, we set all that up, set the pipeline. You see the machine learning right there, where you see the data scientists at the bottom to the right. So that's data engineering. Shout out to my man B2B. We got it in there. We get it from SaaS apps, our customer apps, our internal apps. We get it into the ingestment part. S3s, Snowflake, Amazon, get into the S3 buckets, right? That's usually where we put our raw data. Then we get our raw data. You see it curated. And once we get into analytics, that means we're ready to send it to machine learning and the AI scientists and the business users, PBO time, business users, right? But once again, the data engineers need to get it into a usable form. So once again, the AI can use it to train, the business analysts can use it to run statistics on it, look at our profit, click streams, what you're clicking on, what's hot. That's what Amazon does in real life, right? They use stuff like this and says, everybody's buying this, send it to everybody, right? So that's machine learning, but you got to get the data over there so the machine learning can train itself. I appreciate that. Everybody's been asking for interviews. I need to start lining those up. Let's see. Every time I say hallucinations, I think of Cam and Chris. I boo. Boo. You think I'm glad that I'm one of the things go off the rails? Facts. Let me Cam before the bill. Yeah, I need to set those up. I'm gonna start setting those up. No, facts. That got me thinking on that. Checking my stance on that, Ben Tech. You're correct. Like I said, I like to debate. I think it's more of an AI issue, but not a GRC issue. But it's an issue. Nevertheless, it's who's responsible for that issue, I think, is the question. So once again, keep putting some questions in the chat. Like I said, we've been here for hours, so. Like my man Jim said, PBO running out of gas. So once again, it's some good stuff. Hopefully Dwight and Chris could go get that privacy rolling again. Man, I need to get Cam and put him in the queue so we can talk about hallucinations. So what that looks like. And once again, I should do this when I was at DoD. We called it data warehousing back then. Now I think they kind of upgraded to data engineering because there's obviously a little more to it. But yeah, Redshift is Amazon's preferred data warehousing for data marts database. S3 is their object bucket. Inside their objects, they actually have a SQL engine. So even though it's on the object database, and they have a bucket specifically for object querying, which I think is unique. It's a S3 data table bucket, which is meant to do that. Right there, you see raw, curate, and analysis. So you got flat files out there, CSVs, JSON. You can actually have videos on there because you got a SageMaker and AWS recognition. It'll actually read through your videos. It'll give you sentiment. It'll give you you can print out language. You can change that language to other languages. You can read through it and look for bad words. I appreciate you, Jim Moore. Thanks for coming up. So there's a lot of things you can do, especially with the data engineering and data lakes, right? Once again, I did that for about 5 or 6 years. One of my friends, he's hard, not tough to work with, but he used to work for Discover. Man, it taught me some killer techniques when we were trying to move 1 billion rows. And back then you had one VM. So how do you do that with one VM? So managing big data before it was big data, right? So yeah, I've been kind of intrigued with the data engineering part. I might take the cert. I took a couple practice tests, so debating if I'm gonna go ahead and get that data engineering AWS certification. Once again, though, but I've done it before. So once again, drop your questions. I appreciate you, Cam. So drop your questions or comments in the chat. Yeah, I'm gonna pick a day to do a lunch and learn. I think I'm gonna do it Thursday at noon. I just don't want to step on the Chris toes, so I didn't see them have anything Thursday. So I think that's gonna be my normal spot. Thursday, 12 Eastern, my lunchtime, doing lunch and learn specifically for risk assessment contracts, DPA's data processing agreement for those risk assessment, threat assessments. Once again, RFPs, RFI, request for proposals, request for information. Kind of going through that from a GRC perspective. I appreciate you, Regine. Have a good night. I'm right behind you. PBO like is running out of gas. Whew. It's just Tuesday. So once again, reach out to me if I'm a little late. I'm getting my energy back, so I'll be reaching out to people. Once again, I appreciate everybody. Let's see what I had an interview today for vulnerability management. Good luck with that. I've done a piece of that. I've never done vulnerability management. In the past, I used Rapid7, Nexus, and Qualsys. Those are the ones I usually use. Then AWS has their inspector from a cloud. I usually use that for their particular vulnerability management. No, I'm lacking. I'm on hold. I need to get back at that. I need to get back at that. I appreciate you, Ben Tech. I just kind of fell off on that. I got started, then which was all on me. I needed to do some more stuff, and I just kind of took the wind out of my sails. Because I was kind of almost done, and he wanted to come back and do some standards, which they needed to be done, but they just kind of took the wind out of my sails. So I need to get back into good graces and finish that Ben Tech. But yeah, I'm on hold. I need to get back into that though. I just kind of lost momentum and kind of lost the zeal to finish that. But we got to finish what we start. I appreciate you, Ben Tech, though. Appreciate you for asking. Once again, throw the last couple questions in there. We're gonna shut it on down. I'm easily found. I usually say that, but I'm usually in study GRC bothering those guys. I'm back in Discord checking pretty kind of regularly on that. Chris usually handles that. He usually pings me if he wants me to look at something specific. So, and I think I'm on their coffee with the study GRC group. Those guys usually handle it, but if they need me or if you want to speak to me, you can set that up. Chris, ping me if you want to have a coffee with me. I usually just do it in LinkedIn, and because you can start a quick meeting in LinkedIn, so or Discord. A lot of times I just ping people on Discord. So once again, I hope everybody's having a good year. If you're trying to get in the industry, don't be dissuaded. You just came at a bad time. When I first came in, I came in with a recession too. So it's definitely a recession. There's a lot of IT people getting laid off that are good. So I think it's kind of saturating the market. We can have a discussion later. We can bring Cam on and talk about, do we think AI is taking jobs? Are they less jobs? Or is AI taking people out? Right, especially from a GRC perspective. I think, and I think I'm going to talk about that on Thursday. AWS and Azure is making vendors do a lot of self-assessments and make it easier for you to download. Like most big vendors I use, or we just talked about, they're ISO certified or got a SOC 2 Type 2 or got a FedRAMP 3PAO certification, right? So they're doing a lot of self-assessment. So those particular big pieces, I don't really do as much anymore, meaning they have a SOC 2 Type 2. Shout out to my man, David. So they're going to look at a lot of things I think are base stuff, right? Do you have logs? Are you doing encryption? Are you doing MFA, right? There's basic stuff, I believe, if you're a big company, you should be doing, right? So specific things I'm looking for. Are you using FIPS 140-2 encryption, meaning that encryption was signed off by the government, right? Are you using FIPS endpoints inside AWS or Azure, meaning even though you can get through those services from the internet, you make it go through your tenant, meaning you can look at the package, you can control it, you can anything going through your tenant, you can make it have MFA if you want, right? Or you can specifically control where it goes, right? From a risk assessment. Oh yeah, especially a long game. Long suffer. Shout out to the long suffer. Yeah. So once again, don't give up. I understand too is you might have to go do something else while you're still working on your skills, still working on your portfolio, still working on what you need to do to get in. Right. I've seen a lot of people when I first got in there, left tech and never came back. Right. So, but you're all right. It's a long game. Once again, I just came in at the right time. Even though I came in a recession, I was a developer once again. So I programmed for a decade. Cybersecurity wasn't really out, right? But once again, it's a long game. I think everybody here I talk to, they're doing the right things. Sometimes the right things don't work out right at first, right? You got to build up, right? You got to suffer in it. You know, I've been listening to too much rap music, trying to get out the digital mud, starting from the bottom, right? I'm gonna have to have Kim help me make a rap song, coming out the digital mud, right? You got to get it out the digital mud, meaning it's hard, man. It's gonna be a grind, right? And even at my age, I'm trying to get AWS certification so I can get my cloud skills up, right? So I can stay in the game, right? A lot of people are getting washed out. And I'm almost 60. So when 60-year-olds have to go looking for a job, that's not good. That's not good at all. So don't be thinking PBO's got it. So I got the other issue, and I did that. I did a couple ageism videos, and that's another video for another day. You know, ageism, trying to get in the game. A lot of times, if you're a certain age, they don't even look at your resume, right? So that's part of the game too. They don't want you pulling on a health insurance. So, but once again, it's not about me. It's about you. And what I think people talked about it, like you said, trying to break in long game for sure. The why I like that long suffering, being taken 100% in the game. But once again, keep your head up. The grind is real. The digital mud is real. But once again, once you get in, once you get to rolling, I think somebody tech has been very, very good to me. Yeah, tech has been very, very good to me. If 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when I got into tech, I never, thought I kind of would be where I'm at. I made a couple round moves, but I still can't complain. Shout out to my man, Gabe, Struggle Security. He's in those director roles. Sometimes I turn down a couple management and supervisor roles when I was younger. Now I'm like, man, maybe I should have went the management route. But once again, I can't complain. Like y'all just trying to get over this hump and trying to survive this recession right here. And it's going to be interesting, once again, what the future's going to hold. I think tech is getting beat up a little bit, but it got beat up when the dot-com bubble burst. I mean, people forgot about that. It was similar to this, right? The bubble burst, and they were laying off thousands and hundreds of thousands of people when the dot-com bubble burst. For me, this reminds me of that. So once again, don't get discouraged. Keep grinding. Even if you got to pivot out the field, that's fine. But keep on your skills so you can get there. Facts. The mystical FUD, you're right, coming out winning in the facts. So that's really what it's all about. Once again, it takes a while. And shout out to the boomers. They've been gatekeeping too. So we got to push the baby boomers out there so more people can get into the industry. So I think that's a big issue. And two, don't get hung up on the big tech. I never worked for big tech, and I had a decent life, man. I worked for I was a consultant for small agencies and middle agencies, and once again, I got put at DOD instead of Indiana. Like I said, made great money for 15 years. So once again, don't get discouraged. Keep grinding. Everybody have a great week. Y'all definitely gonna see me in study GRC. I probably stay in the clouds. I feel like I'll be stepping on those guys' toes a little bit. They're doing a great job. Once again, I see everybody in here. So if you need me, just ping me. I'm mad at Regine. She should have pinged me on one of my lives and told me to come see her. So once again, we had a great conversation. So salute to her. Once again, I wouldn't say easy to find, but you can find me. If you see me on somebody's podcast or my live, just tell me to go look at my LinkedIn or tell me to look at my Discord so we can have a chat, especially the people that's been supporting me. I just want to make sure I give back to the community. Facts. When you apply LinkedIn, it said, yeah, I wouldn't. No, facts. Some of those are bots, though. Some of those are bots. No, you facts. I see those lots. Some of those are bots, but what I would do a lot of times in my last resort is if you're going to the office, you're going to cut out 97% of your competition, right? If you try to get a remote job, now that is brutal. That is brutal. So I tell people, my plan Z, I'm going to have to squeeze in. I always say a suit. People wear suits, but if I have to squeeze in something and go into the office a couple times a week, that would be my plan Z. So definitely put that in your arsenal, especially if you're just starting or you're trying to get in the industry. Even though I hate going to the office and I never would, I think if you're trying to get in the industry, I think that's definitely the play. Especially we can get you some unique GRC skills to make you valuable. I'm big on state agencies. I think state and city agencies, they don't pay the best, but I think a little easier to get into. You get your foot in the door. They usually have great tools because the big vendors give a big discount to city and state. When I worked for the state in Indiana, man, we were using Cisco, Oracle, Cloud, AWS, Azure. We had all the top stuff. So a lot of guys, once they were there 3 or 4 years, they would leave and go work for the vendors. They would get like a 50% pay bump when they leave the state or the city. So I always tell people I think that's the gov tech play. Really is that. Once again, I'm big on state, city, and county. Once again, all those all of those have IT resources from the state and county perspective. Then a lot of those agencies have their own IT and security teams on top of that. So once again, I think that's the plan. We can definitely dig into that a little deeper. I think I'm gonna go live Thursday. I need to check on Study GRC, see what they're doing, but I'm gonna try to do Thursday at noon, lunch and learn, talk about risk assessment, privacy assessment, contract, procurement, legal, how all that plays together. Once again, kind of what we did. How do you go through, pick the vendor, make sure the vendor is appropriate, make sure that service is appropriate for doing that type of work. That type of work for me is usually federal work. Once again, I want to appreciate everybody for joining me. I want everybody to have a great hump day, and I'm out. Everybody have a great weekend.